Hello, Meoni here, and welcome back to my tea time. This is where I get to sit down with you guys and talk to you as if you were here in this room with me this very second. Although, if you were, you'd probably be quite cold today because it's something like -2. It's horrific. I don't know, it feels like -2. It's probably like 2 degrees out there. There's frost, thick ice across my windshield of my car, so that's hampering my ability to do anything at the minute this morning. So I'm waiting for that to defrost before I can actually go and upload this video. But we are looking at some seriously cold weather, and what's exactly happened in my life, and pretty much the game that I play, that you guys play as well. So last weekend, so the 18th of January, I enjoyed my 31st birthday. I really do feel old. The first year in the saga towards 40, and I'm not really looking forward to that in any regard at all. It just seems like everything in my body has just decided to go bleh, basically. I wake up and I go, what a beautiful day this is going to be, and I'm full of positivity, and I want to go and get them, as they say, and then my knees are like, and my back is like, basically everything is making that horrific noise, but I decided to mimic there with my voice. But yes, it is a tough time. I'm starting to realize all of the things my mum and dad went through when I was a lot younger. So yeah, it's scary times. The fact then you can remember a time in your parents' life when they were like this, and now you're entering it. It's not good. But does that change anything in regards my view on video games, or whether or not I should be playing them at 31? No, hell no. I actually love them even more. And the more stuff I actually revisit from my childhood, especially in terms of games, the more I actually get from them that I didn't originally realize. There's a lot of dialogue in older games that I played probably before I should have, especially RPGs and things like that, because I think a lot of the dialogue sort of goes over my head. If I was to play Final Fantasy VII again all the way through, I'm sure I would pick up on even more little details here and there with the dialogue, and stuff that I, sort of shrugged off at the time simply because I didn't understand it. So I'm having a lot of fun revisiting older games, but at the same time, there's a lot of new stuff coming out, as we already know and are aware. But that's unfortunately sort of paling in comparison to my addiction, which is Monster Hunter World. I've been getting towards the end game of that now. So put in a few hundred hours into that in the past few weeks. Not gonna lie, it's been fun playing with members of my Discord community. I did forget to actually leave a Discord link last time. I'm gonna actually do it this time, and we can get viewer rank. I don't actually know how to assign the roles automatically yet, so that's something we're going to have to look into. I don't have like a bot running or anything like that, so we need to fix that. We need to set that up, but I'm not exactly very savvy when it comes to Discord servers, so if one of you are, maybe you could help me out with that, trying to set up a role select system or something akin to that. Save me time, basically. That's all I want. Somebody just to help me out and save me time. And if you're good at Discord servers, then I definitely want to hear from you. In fact, you can send me an email. The email is clismcast@gmail.com, my business email, or contact me via DMs on Twitter. They are open indeed, so feel free. Apart from that, what have we been doing? So Final Fantasy XIV has been the main focus for the past day, and indeed today. As you saw with a couple of videos, I've been grinding hard for my Moogle tomes. And when I say grinding hard, I don't mean from like 7 in the morning till 10 at night. I mean like for a few hours here and there. I managed to get 50 tomes yesterday on its own with just casual play. We did a bit of Blue Mage runs. We only did like 5 or 6 or something. In general, I got about 50. Well, yeah, I got 53 or 54 tomestones of soldiery, and I bought the Magitech Predator mount. This is something a lot of people will be like, why did you spend 50 tomes on something you can get that you can unsync and go and farm for? Well, simply, my dear, it is because the RNG does not exist for this player. I have the worst time. I can go and help people farm for mounts or whatever they want, minions, gear, glamour, you name it. I can go and help them. They'll get their item, and then it'll be another 50 runs before we see another one of them, and somehow the game will find a way to not let me have it. Be my inventory filled with other trash, or just, a disconnect, or, you come back and the loot's not there, or there's a power cut or something. You name it, the game tries to screw me at the best of times. So, yeah, I was like, no, we're not doing that. We're going to use these tomestones, and, we're just going to farm another 100 more for the neckerchief. So it's really not as bad as most people are making out. The grind in this game, as people are saying, is nowhere near the stuff I'm used to in other games, and indeed, single player and MMORPG stuff. A lot of people compare this to, Korean games. I wish it was just back in the day where Korean games were the only grindy ones. Well, personally, I still think that's the case. I think people need to wake up and smell the roses, that the grind in games is just the thing you do. It's the thing that keeps you actually playing. If you were just handed an item and said, there you go, off you go, skipper, there's not really anything that's going to make you happy about that. It's like how they used to do the seasonal events in Final Fantasy XIV. You logged in, you skipped a load of dialogue, you got your reward. Now, for the most part, that's still a bit of a case in a lot of these events, but there is usually something to do, like you need to go to this map and talk to this person, and they've worked a lot harder on the cutscenes, and the motion capture is way better. People actually do things, the emotes that they use, rather. There's a lot of skill gone into the cutscenes. There's a lot of nice music that's been composed, such as the choir event. We got a new song in that for Christmas. A lot of people give the seasonal events a bad time, but as a whole, they take a lot of development time and probably a lot of the budget. And bear in mind, seasons are kind of regular since, they're all year round. So we kind of have to be a little bit more grateful, I think, across the board than we are. That doesn't mean that we have to put up necessarily with really bad events. If something is really bad, or if it's just a re-release of something from the previous year with no real additions or alterations or side quests, then obviously that's poor play. But there's usually a reason for that, usually in the development cycle, if they're working on something big, like a new expansion behind the scenes, which no doubt they are. I mean, it's not any kind of secret that they'll be working on the next expansion by now. I mean, they've got another year and a half or so, right? Less than a year before they unveil what they're going to be probably looking at in 6.0. So yeah, that's all kinds of exciting if you think about it. But at the same time, depending on the month and what sort of content's coming out, we're going to get a lot less to do, and perhaps a lot less sort of interesting or revolutionary ideas being put into events. So we've got the Yokai Watch event coming up soon. That is another grind fest. If you want to call something a grind fest, that's pretty much the closest you're going to get. That's basically doing fates endlessly in old Realm Reborn areas to acquire weapon glamours and indeed minions, and I believe possibly a new mount. I don't know. There's no official release on this. We basically have nothing to go off of, apart from what was talked about at a live letter and the, the anniversary event. It was like a 14-hour broadcast where they talked about the potential for it, and they had the dude from Yokai Watch, like the representative, I think, of level 5, and he was like, yeah, it'd be really cool to do it again, and, there's lots of new jobs since the last one in 2017. Can you believe the last Yokai Watch event actually took place in 2017, and now it's 2020? That's crazy. If you said that to me like the other day, I would have just gone, no, and I would have looked at the calendar. I had to go back and look at my Yokai Watch footage for the game, my guides that I did, because I got all of the weapons and all of the minions last time, and I did guides and previews for all of them, and indeed all of the minion text in one video. It was a bit crazy, really, to do that, but I went back and it's 2017, which is that just makes you feel even more old, because 2017 is something that generally I would consider as fairly recent, but in reality it's really not. So yeah, time's moving fast, like I said at the start of this video. So Final Fantasy XIV has proven to be a bit of a Marmite game. A lot of the downtime can be appropriated to other IPs, be that single player adventures or, other MMOs. A lot of people play lots of different games, be that Destiny 2 or, to a lesser extent these days, World of Warcraft. That recently got updated. So yeah, there's a lot of variety, but the game is designed around that downtime so that there's leeway for you to do other things. They're not going to just release a small, terrible patch to keep you, tided over until the next release. Although there are small little things they will release, such as this Moogle itinerant grind, just for glamour, basically. This is a completely optional event. And all of the rewards, apart from two, so the Namazu Neck Chief, the necklace slot item, and the Blue Mage Fireworks, everything else can be acquired in the game naturally. But there are some really good bits and pieces to take from this. So I asked people, and indeed Square Enix, to incentivize the queuing of rival wings, which is something that I want to actively do myself and take part in. Well, with this event, they've added 5 tomestones of soldiery for completion of a Hidden Gorge. So if you directly queue for that, you can expect a game from anywhere between, 20 to 30 minutes or so. Pretty good games, really. It's quite addictive, but the problem usually with Hidden Gorge is it just doesn't pop, especially with the new Frontline Roulette system. Well, I guess it's not. It's what is it called? The Frontline Daily Challenge. Someone corrected me in a previous video. It's no longer a roulette. It changed a while ago, Meoni. Get with the times. But in reality, it did screw up quite a few things by only having one option in that particular slot of roulettes, or whatever you want to call them, those challenge page on the front of your duty finder. Either way, right? It screwed up a few things, and a lot of the content that people want to actually go and do, just there was no point in queuing for it, such as Siege and Shatter. Or completely missing now. Like, queuing for those will take you like nearly an hour, I would say, if you were to try and queue for them. But Rival Wings is a 5-minute queue after 8 PM on our Chaos data center. I'm not really sure what it's like on other data centers because I don't play on them. But yeah, there's the Revival Wings Discord community that are working pretty hard to make this a thing. I don't really know the details of that, but I do know that every night from around 8 PM, sort of server time onwards, you can actually get 5-minute queues, which is really good. And if you want to go for your mount, obviously that's 100 wins. That's going to take a while. A lot of them admittedly have been losses. But, it's 5 tomestones for a loss. It's not too bad. You don't have to win all the time. But if you are eager to actually go and grind out all of these items without doing anything else, then obviously Blue Mage and the other things I mentioned in that previous video we looked at yesterday will actually help you along that. But the other thing about PvP before we move on from that is that it's a good chance to not only get the Rival Wings mounts, but there are lots of other achievements for taking part in PvP sort of frontline battles. So a lot of those things count as well, sort of victories as grand companies, stuff like that. Of course, there are achievements and titles as well. So in reality, you could pretty much say that you could farm for 7 or so mounts in the game all at once. If you add up all of the rewards from the Moogle Tome stuff, from the Beast Tribes and stuff that you can get from that vendor, as well as the old PvP stuff as well. So that's a pretty good deal. If all you want to do is PvP, then this is certainly your time to shine. And admittedly, there's quite a bit of extra stuff you can do with Blue Mage. I did, like I say, yesterday, we tried to do sort of like a faster run of Aurum Vale. So we get 5 tomestones per run of that dungeon. And we went in there with 4 Blue Mages. Admittedly, 2 of them didn't have all of the spells, and we weren't really that prepared. But we still did like a 9-minute 30 run, which was really good. You can shave that down to 7 minutes, apparently, as someone replied in the comment section, by basically having a tank with 3 Blue Mages. Now, immediately you might think, well, I didn't think you could play with other classes in content, but essentially, if you do have a complete party, that 4-player party, you can pretty much play Blue Mage with whatever you want. It doesn't matter, and it still sinks down. So one person can beat a tank, run in there, aggro everything, and pull it to the first boss, and then the Blue Mages can just absolutely obliterate it. You could even ethereal mimicry one of the Blue Mages, if they have that ability, to a healer. So one of them's literally a healer Blue Mage with the same sort of DPS output they usually would have, and then have your other 2 Blue Mages on DPS stance, with stuff like Missile and Launcher, which has a chance to half the HP of monsters, and it even works on the first 2 bosses. It was absolutely glorious. You know, I'm harping on about how I was enjoying Blue Mage, but that's simply because it fit a shoe. You know, it had a purpose for this event, and it still has. So I would definitely make the most of that if you have Blue Mage and you want to get some sort of rewards out of it. This could really be a viable option. I mean, 7-minute runs is pretty good if you compare it for 5 tomestones. You know, 7 tomestones for a Dunscape run that takes 30 minutes, or you could do PvP, which is 20 to 30 minutes for 5, or you could do 7 minutes of an Aurum Vale run with Blue Mages and a tank, and get 5 as well. So it's really up to you what you want to do, and that variety is probably key to you not burning out. If you were to do just one thing back to back, like I said in that previous video, you're gonna have a tough time unless you have that grind mentality, which I understand a lot of this community does not have. I was used to a lot more sort of grind focused people back in World of Warcraft who had to play through vanilla WoW and had to grind for things, and to a greater extent actually a lot of the Korean games I've played in the past, such as Arcade and Terra Online and things like that on their original releases, where those games were incredibly grindy, and in fact I believe still are to some extent as well. If we were to go by Arcade Unchained's recent sort of situation, it's quite eye-opening to see games have that grind as a filler piece of content, but really what else could you do that's low on development time, low cost, but gives you some sort of incentive to play the game? And a lot of people will say, well, there's daily quests and things like that, but a lot of people in the past have looked down upon dailies. I remember back in World of Warcraft where, what was it? I can't remember. It was like a PvP map. I'm going to get butchered here for the names, but they brought out a PvP map and they had mounts and stuff as a reward. And then their idea of another update was to just add more mounts to that tab, to the reward vendor. So but essentially they just added another 30 hours of that content to the game by doing nothing. And, you know, they had dailies to unlock that stuff as well. So they just added another daily hub. And World of Warcraft, for the most part, has done that for the longest time. And usually it gets looked down on. Oh, look, another set of dailies. Oh, look, another reputation faction to grind. So I think that when Final Fantasy looks at other games, especially other MMOs, they're always looking at what's positive and negative. And for the most part, I think that daily quests have been something that have put them off. Me personally, I quite like a reputation grind and stuff like that. Maybe that's something that some people would say is missing from 14. I mean, we have the Beast Tribes, but, you know, we have a limit of 12 dailies per day. And if you do the Realm Reborn ones, you'll know that 12 can be taken up instantly by the Ixali or something like that. I mean, I recently have been working through my Realm Reborn Beast Tribes, as I mentioned in the previous tea time. And I remember, yesterday, in fact, I used all 12 allowances for Beast Tribes, all on the Ixali, to complete their quest, just for one day. I was blown away by that, because I'm used to the modern ones where you have 3 dailies per day. You sometimes you have the rank up quest and then another 3, but that's only one of the days of several in a month. It's crazy to me to think of how this was, how they were so focused on more dailies and how that impacted the feeling that you have. So there's a balance to be struck, and I believe that they have it, but perhaps there's a need for stuff like that maybe in 14. So I don't know, what would you rather have? Would you rather have a grind session like we have for little events like this? Or would you rather them add an NPC that has a reputation gauge that you increase sort of with custom deliveries, but with your sort of like killing of monsters and stuff like that, akin to World of Warcraft? Let me know below. I'm really interested in that sort of concept. But it is what it is. The Itinerant Moogle event is on until 5.2 releases, so you have all the way up until middle of February. We don't have a current date as the time of this recording, but I can imagine it's somewhere in the middle there, probably earlier rather than later, when we'll see all of that 5.2 goodness. And until then, if you are not interested in the Itinerant Moogle and you're not interested in this grind event, simply don't do it. That would be my best sort of advice for you. There are plenty of other games on the market that you probably need to go and play if you've got them for Christmas or whatever. Go and give them some love. Go and have a nice variety of experiences. You need to have that. You owe it to yourself, because when you're 31 as well and you're sat here with a Steam library of 400 games and you've played only about 200 of them, then yeah, you start to realize the importance of a bit of variety now and again. Okay, so we're coming towards the end of the video now of what I can actually upload today. Bear in mind, this takes an absolute ice age to upload with my internet. So let's look at some comments from last week's Tea Time. So if you remember, we looked at the idea of remasters and sort of other bits to do with the community. And yeah, sort of community feedback on certain parts of the comment sections on other videos. So let's see, we have Amanda Peters here, who said 5 days ago, I was initially interested in 7, not really having played the original, but then they said it would release in parts. I won't spend $60 on each part to make up a whole game and story. If they added more content, I wouldn't be surprised if it's just fluff. Otherwise, it just screams about a situation similar with 15, and just handing out more money for a complete story and game. Same with Kingdom Hearts 3 now. Suddenly, Final Fantasy characters are being added as DLC after the hullabaloo about them being missing. The whole reason a lot of people started playing the series in the first place. The big question is, did they really need more time, or did they do this on purpose? Either way, I was really excited for both of these games, and they were a huge letdown due to the missing content. Flips tables emote. Anyway, with Square Enix disappointing me twice very recently, I'm not buying 7 unless it's like you said, 5 years from now, and it's all in one. 14 is the only Square Enix game that I have any trust in at this moment, and I used to be a huge fangirl for them, end quote. So yeah, Amanda, I mean, in retrospect, a lot of this is quite interesting to look at. The idea of splicing up a game and reselling to you as separate parts. This is something that 15, I think, is the prime example of, isn't it? Like, once bitten, twice shy. I think that's on the lips of most people that are familiar with 15. I mean, Final Fantasy VII is such a classic. How badly can you butcher it and separate it before people, you know, go, wait a minute. As much as I love Square Enix and I love this game, this is ridiculous. Yeah, I don't know. Like, it feels weird, doesn't it? It's like, how do you explain this? So watching an episode of an anime or a TV series when it's out and then waiting for the next week, but instead of waiting for the next week, you're waiting for 1 to 2 years, right, to see what happens. Maybe that's a bit extreme. Maybe it's like season 1 finishes and you're waiting another 2 years. So if we compare it to I was going to compare it to Game of Thrones. That would be terrible since the last season sucked. Spoilers, I guess. It's really bad, in my opinion, anyway. I really didn't enjoy the conclusion. But that's, you know, what it is what it is. But back to 7, I don't think necessarily they are doing it deliberately. I think it's just that game development probably doesn't suit the old concept of working for 5 to 7 years of it on a concept and releasing it as a complete package. Like, in a day and age where we have other games on the market that are released way before they should in parts, and then perhaps have a season pass and don't fulfill all of those particular episodes, or, you know, they don't list exactly what's in the season pass. They just say, buy our season pass and you'll get a certain amount of stuff, but we won't actually nail it down. We're not going to say that we're getting it. But the problem with 15 is they did, right? They said that we were going to get episode Noctis, and we were going to see Luna Freya have her own episode, and that's the bit that really cuts deep, because that's what you really want to see, because, you know, I can't really spoil the ending of 15, but it was the worst thing I've seen in my life. I was so disheartened. I played through that game, the halfway point sort of felt very weird, sort of when they introduced Aranea, and then towards the end where it became a corridor game, for lack of a better term. I think a lot of reviewers called it a corridor ending, where basically you were shoved into a literal series of corridors for maybe the last hour or so, and you just had like a boss rush mode. And then like there was that small section of open world, and then like some bosses, but the open world had nothing in it, and there was nothing for you to see. That was very un-Final Fantasy to me, right? The idea that 7 could be similar to that, and you know, think back to Final Fantasy VII, right? Back when we had Final Fantasy games where you got on an airship and you could fly around a world map and do whatever you wanted. You wanted to go and look at all the caves? Tough. You had to go and raise a chocobo. And then you went and breeded the correct chocobo and you got a gold chocobo and you managed to get into a cave and you fought this boss or whatever, or you found Knights of the Round and you became incredibly powerful. That exploration and reward through your own commitment to certain tasks in the old Final Fantasy games is what made them unique and exciting to me, at least, and a lot of other people in the fandom. So the idea that they could be splicing that up is very, very worrying. I mean, is there even an open world map? Has anyone actually asked this as a question in any of the Q&As with the Final Fantasy VII team? All of these people that in the media, do they actually ask the important questions? I don't know. I haven't looked this up, but I would very much doubt it. I've not heard anything of this. Is there even going to be an open world? Like the first chapter, this first game of several like DLC chapters, I presume that's how they're doing it, right? This first game is entirely set in Midgar. That's fine. That's cool. But Midgar didn't have a lot of exploration to begin with, right? You couldn't go back to certain areas once you hit like the train graveyard and places like that. You couldn't go back to the main square where you had that shoot off scene. Is there going to be like side quests? What kind of things can you do? Is there any open world aspect at all? Otherwise, I mean, I can't imagine just playing the Midgar section of Final Fantasy VII, right? Back in the day, you played that section of a game, which was the sort of prequel to the game, that opening area, and you thought Midgar was literally it, right? You played through it if 7 was your first game and you'd not played 6 or anything. You played through 7 for the first time as your entry into the series, and you're like, wow, this game's really cool. I love the storyline, this big city or whatever. And as soon as you leave the city and see the world map, and being able to move around and sort of initiate random battle encounters depending on what scenarios and scenery is behind you, and then the airship and the trip to space on the rocket of Sid's, visiting the various towns and seeing all of the little side things and little references to the past and, little caves you could go into and recruitable secret characters like Vincent and Yuffie. Like, how incredible is that, like, in terms of feeling? But we're not going to actually physically have that. So think about why they're making this remake, okay? So Final Fantasy VII for a new generation. So it's to honor the people who loved the original game and to give them something new and add, like, extra bits of fluff, as you mentioned in your comment, Amanda. But also, it's aimed at a new generation that's not played 7, which is great. But is this going to be something that you can sit down with little Timmy, who's like, 12 years old, and go, this is the game that was the benchmark for most MMORPGs and RPGs to come, things that everybody set their focus on from the FMVs onwards. Is this going to be something that we can be proud of? Or is little Timmy going to go, yeah, it was a good game, but what happens next? And why is it only in a city? I don't know. The magic, the mysticism rather, is going to be taken away, I think. So, yeah, I don't know. How long is it going to be before we have a complete package? Is the blending between those chapters going to be sort of like seamless? We'll have to wait and see. But you brought up some really interesting points. But for the most part, apprehension and excitement is most people's feelings. And if they're lying, and if they say that they're not apprehensive or worried, and they've played Final Fantasy VII before when it was originally out, then I think they might be lying to themselves. Yeah, it's exciting to get something new, but what happens if they rewrite certain scenes? What if they completely negate the open world aspect? How are you going to rate that game if they've basically changed everything? They've added little side quests and things to do, but they haven't given you that sort of gem of the past. They haven't polished it even further. So we'll have to wait and see. But 7 is a big bucket of worms, more than a can at this point, and we'll just have to wait until there's more information. It looks good, but lots of games look good these days. So, and we'll read one more comment since I waffled a bit. So from Riku Takanashi, who says, what upsets me about people complaining about the 7 pushbacks over delays is a lot of people are getting really nasty towards the company and seem to forget there's individual people involved. They act like they can just snap their fingers and a perfectly made game will pop out of thin air, that they're just being lazy and mean. I swear I've seen some people seem to take delays as personal offenses, like Square Enix personally wanting to spite them. And heck, many of those in the Pokemon community would have relished having delays if it had gotten them more of a complete game they wanted. Criticism is good, it's healthy, but only if it's constructive. Griping for the sake of griping while offering no meaningful solution or thoughts towards the issue isn't going to fix anything and just tears people down. And they say, people act so surprised that a lot of companies don't listen to their players. Well, it's because the constructive criticism is getting drowned out by the sheer volume of the complaining. This is why we have PR teams and people like that and community representatives, so that the developers don't have that instant impact themselves. However, I completely agree with you, obviously. People do take things seriously. These are games at the end of the day. They're pastimes for a lot of people, hobbies for the rest of us, and passions for a small select few that we play way too many hours of. But we can become very passionate about. And constructive criticism, be that negative or positive, it doesn't really matter as long as it is constructive. When it comes to delays, people are always going to be salty. People have been salty about delays since the SNES times and presumably before then. But people complaining that, oh no, this game's delayed until next year. Lazy developers, what are they doing? They're just sitting on their thumbs. When in reality, they're like crunching pretty hard. You only have to look at Cyberpunk 2077 to realize that, the community as a whole around video games, the general community at large, are just really weird people who don't seem to understand how the industry works, the game industry. They just don't sit down and realize, you know what, I'm sat here in an office and I'm working in this, 9 till 5 job. While these people are working longer hours in similar situations, they are pushing it as hard as they can. It's a job at the end of the day. It's a passion for a lot of them, but that passion is, pushed to its absolute limits. And when a game is pushed for a release of a month and they just honestly can't reach it, they shouldn't be apologetic for it, and people shouldn't see that as a sign of defeatism. They should see that as, oh, well, actually, I'm going to get a better product overall. Now, obviously, you can polish something too much. Something can be edited or censored to the point where, oh, well, the Western audience, for example, I'm using an example here of some of the Eastern games I see, the Western audience doesn't want this content, or the Western audience is more sensitive, so we can't have this, this particular part of skin showing or whatever, right? Be that sort of etchy sort of games you might find on Steam or otherwise, right? I mean, if you remember, there was an international version of Final Fantasy X, and there was another version of it, and the American release was cut down in pretty much half of the sort of content we had, like with Dark Aeons and stuff, and then they sold another version when the game was popular and resold it with that content back in. So this is not a new concept. There are lots of IPs that have been unnecessarily censored just to release in the West, and they use that as an excuse of why the dates are released much later, or a game is delayed, or localization, where in reality a lot of people would just want the core game, they want it released in all regions the same. Localization is an interesting thing where, there's such things as changing the script or changing the direct translation to make more sense. And then there are things like completely editing out scenes because it might be offensive to a certain community or something like that. But to the point of it anyway, I think Final Fantasy VII will benefit from a delay, and people complaining about delays obviously want an unfinished product that they can't be happy with. They'll only complain anyway, but they'll complain more if the game doesn't boot, I can assure them. Anyway, that's all we have time for today. Either way, thank you kindly for watching this week's Tea Time. Feel free to leave me some questions for the next one in the comment section. I will work my way through as many as possible and more community focused the next episode. So thank you once again for watching. Wherever you are, enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you all next time.